Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Podcast. It's the day after Super Tuesday. Me and Mike Madrid like to call it Wonderful Wednesday. Mike, how have you been?
I've been better rested than I am this morning. These long nights of kind of looking at ballots is kind of wearing me out a little bit. I will say I don't think that there was a whole hell of a lot. We're gonna cover this, election results, and kind of give our own perspectives of what happened, but I don't think there was too much to delve into at a real granular level across 15 states. I think we've got a clear picture. And of course, it led to, I think, the thing that we want to talk about first, which is Nikki Haley just dropping out. We just found out just a few moments ago. Give you a sense of when we're recording?
Just coming across the ticker right now. For all of you old people that know what the I don't think the new people
That's
do
like
that.
from the 1930s, bro. That was not a good look.
I thought that was last week.
and then Mitch McConnell bends the knee. The old crow kneels in fealty and hands over the last vestige of Reagan republicanism on a gilded silk pillow to Trump and says, "It is your party. I'm retiring. Uncle, I'm out. I'm done. You can have it. All of it." McConnell endorses Donald Trump. So Chucky, where do you want to start?
I think there's a million things, and I think that it's like we've been consuming news. Thank God we went back to a weekly format. At this point, I think we could do this every day because of all the, don't get any ideas. You don't pay me enough to do this every day, but we're doing this once a week. It's just crazy town. And then on top of everything that Mike Madrid just said about what went down starting the day after Super Tuesday, which was McConnell, Nikki Haley, Kirsten Sinema tried to step on Super Tuesday for everybody. So everybody is waiting around with bated breath on the newly minted independent senator from Arizona. She's like, "Peace, dudes. I'm out of here." Looks like a hostage video in a closet and comes out and posts it. The audio was worse than this podcast audio. That's pretty bad. Production team, look, we have a big production team. We don't need them walking out. Look, we appreciate everything you're doing to make me sound so good and to make Mike Madrid with 15 different filters look good. Yeah. But going back to Super Tuesday, I want Mike to talk about, this is the one thing I was thinking about this morning, Mike, and I want your perspective on it because you talked about this last week. As all of these states came in, I kept looking at the Nikki number going, okay, who don't like Donald Trump in these states? She had been talking about how she's the 40 number was it. She'd gotten 40 in New Hampshire, 40 in South Carolina, and 40% of the party. Now, last night, in state by state, she didn't reach 40, but only in a couple states. And she ended up, we should give her props. She won Vermont. Nothing says Nikki Haley like Montpelier and DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C., the two primaries that she has won.
Have you been to Montpelier?
Dude, I worked for Bernie Sanders. I've been all around it.
I would love, there should be a short film called The Mexican in Montpelier, like with you in the hat walking around like the Burlington coat factories or whatever they do up there, where they raise coats up there. How does that work?
Jeff Weaver, who is ran Bernie's campaign, who is also like French Canadian, tried to make me understand that the French Canadians were the Mexicans of the North and how they had been ostracized with the border. So like I had this whole Vermont thing that we should do a separate podcast about. But last night, going back to my question for Mike, what does it tell you when somewhere last night between 21%, like in states like Texas, all the way up to 44% in states like Massachusetts, the Republican Party said no mas with Donald Trump in the primary?
Well, look, it's a great question, and I think it's the most fundamental question of the campaign. And I've got one point I want to make as I wrap this up, so I'm getting way ahead of myself. The number for me has always been, what is the anti-Trump, never Trump vote of Haley's base? And I have been saying since Iowa that there's no pro-Haley lane. She has just become the standard bearer for the never Trump movement. And that data point is really important to me because that tells me how much the Biden campaign's got to work with in terms of peeling off the base. Incidentally, within moments of Nikki Haley pulling out of the race, Donald Trump, of course, attacks her on Twitter, calls her bird brain. And President Biden puts out a very gracious note saying, all of those who have worked for and supported Nikki Haley, essentially there's a place for you in my campaign. Now, I'm still waiting on a bunch of invoices I've sent to the Biden campaign for all of my good advice. I think they owe me a couple $1 million right now because I've been right on everything I have told Joe Biden to do.
You just keep waiting on those invoices. I'm sure they're just stuck in the mail.
I think I'll be waiting a long time on those. But the question that I'm looking for now, Chuck, is this. How Nikki Haley's name is still on all these primary ballots. Is she still going to break 20% going forward now that she suspended her campaign? My strong suspicion is it's going to happen in a few states. And I in many ways, I'm kind of glad she dropped out. Look, it's been fun and games, but from a political professional's point of view and from a data point of view, she was never going to win, right? Always saying from the beginning she wasn't going to win. The question is, how much of a chunk can she rip out of the side of this crazy man? I think she did a very good job, but I've also been under no false illusions that this is about Nikki Haley. It's not, it has not been, it is not going forward. I want to see with her name on the ballot, what percentage of the vote of the Republican Church she's going to get without campaigning. That's going to now tell us a lot. And so in many ways, I am kind of glad that she has gotten out of this thing. You tell me now, from your side of the aisle, how Joe Biden wrapped this up. How are things looking in Biden world?
It's the same, right? And I think that as Mike talks about the Republicans and I talk about the Democrats, and there's the anti-Trump vote, which is way bigger than the anti-Biden vote. Let's be clear, Biden won most of his states last night. But let's not be remiss, in case this was just breaking news again this morning, Joe Biden loses a primary caucus last night in America, Samoa, where there were 98 people that showed up, and some entrepreneur. Pissed. Oh my God, the Samoans are pissed. They're like, Joe Biden, no ma, Anyway, let me get to my point. My point is, Joe Biden did incredibly good last night, really well. He's bringing everybody together. And when you look at the anti-vote, no matter how much Nikki Haley anti-Trump vote is out there, the anti-Trump vote and the Nikki Haley votes, I should say that, it really only matters in about 6 states. Let's be clear. It don't matter how many people in Florida or Texas don't like Donald Trump, because it don't matter. What matters is that swing voter in the middle of Pennsylvania. It matters with upstate Michigan, where there's lots of white working class folks who, college educated or not, most of the ones that I've been looking at that are the real swingy have some college. They probably graduate from junior college. Maybe they have a bachelor's degree, and they're that forgotten about white collar worker that's making less than $100,000, but more than 60. That sweet spot between 60,000 and 100,000 to have a semi-comfortable living that when gas goes up, it hurts them a little bit more. All of their wealth of their family is in their home. Mm-hmm. They don't have a lot of institutional wealth handed down. These are the voters I'm really looking at. And it's those voters in just a handful of states who think that they don't like Joe Biden for whatever the reason, or they don't really like Donald Trump. They were looking at Nikki Haley. They're looking at others. I think those handful of states and those handful of neighborhoods are going to make the biggest point. I want to ask you one more question, Mike, about the president, and we can go down about it to a few things. I was listening this morning to some of them pundits who ain't never run an election on TV, and they were talking about like Kyrsten Sinema or a Nikki Haley being somebody that no labels may look at. What do you think about that?
All female ticket, all woman ticket.
Yeah. All under 52, I think.
Yeah. Look, I was it's funny that you mentioned that, because earlier this morning I was wondering the same thing. I was like, is that possible? Like, would they do that? Sinema, I think, would do it. Right. And then I'm thinking, what, Haley would ever do that? And I was thinking, well, Haley kind of ran down this path after New Hampshire, kind of lighting Donald Trump's fake hairdo on fire for the past few weeks with no rationale, with no basis of victory, unless she was going to take it all the way to convention, and she hasn't. So why not? I mean, maybe that's what's going on here. Maybe there's a Sinema Haley ticket to be had. I don't know that it would do particularly well. I thought one of the things that was the most peculiar and tone deaf of Sinema's hostage video, as you accurately framed it as when she bowed out of this thing, Was this like, I'm leaving because I'm the only one who thinks that people should compromise and work together, and because I'm so noble and virtuous, I've got to leave this place? It's like, get that weak shit out of here. What are you
It's
talking
so noble.
about?
Mitch McConnell endorsed Donald Trump today.
Yeah, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, nobody believes that. People believe a lot of things about Kristen Sinema. Nobody believes she's the noble, virtuous one sitting in that Senate seat, who's committed every day, waking up, focused exclusively on what's the best thing for the Republic that day. Like, that's not a thing. There's no constituency for that outside of Kristen Sinema's vanity mirror. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I mean,
I don't know. I quit saying that crazy shit like that would never happen when I said Donald Trump could never be president. Let me be clear. I like to tell everybody that. But I do know that, hey, Kirsten Sinema loves the attention. She would, like you said, she would absolutely love to be a presidential candidate. Nikki Haley, I think she's looking at what she has to do when Donald Trump is not around anymore, to set her up to run for president in 4 years, to be the front runner if Joe Biden was to win re-election and this thing happens again in 4 years. What does she have to do, and if I was her advisor, how would she position herself? By the way, talking about setting yourself up and thinking about in 4 years. I was at the Unidos conference last night, Mike, and it's a Unidos is the old National Council of La Raza for all of you old heads like us. Last year, they had tapped me in to give their, I think, Lifetime Achievement Award to somebody that was on his way out, which was Mike Madrid. So I gave Mike Madrid an award there last year.
They were just trying to get me out of life is what they were trying to do. Like, if we give him an award, maybe he ends the whole thing.
So me and Ebony went last night to the award show. And I tell you this, not to leave this topic of presidentials in 4 years, but Wes Moore, a guy that came from nowhere, who'd never been elected to anything, got elected governor of Maryland 2 years ago. And holy shit, that guy, like, he gave the keynote. Did you know that his family was from Cuba, Mike?
I did not know that.
His mama and his folks came from Cuba and then went to Jamaica, from Cuba, then from Jamaica to South Carolina. Then after being in South Carolina, went back to Jamaica to live for a generation. Like, his story and his immigrant story and his family story is fascinating. And he is good looking and he's good on his feet. I had heard another young black guy like that impress me once before, and his name was Barack Obama. Not making comparisons here, but I got a chance to go backstage with Ebony and we got to meet him and spend he is very charismatic. He's a good, look in your eye, not looking past you politician. So keep your eye, Democrats, on Wes Moore in 4 years, whether Joe Biden wins or he don't, that we're going to have an election in 4 years after this one's over, already looking down the road. But Wes Moore, also a veteran, Mike.
Afro-Cuban?
Yeah, but I think he identifies as African-American.
Okay.
But his grandmother had come from Cuba.
Fascinating.
Yeah, really good.
Isn't it great to be impressed by political talent like at our age? Because we're so damn cynical and we just kind of, look at people like they're kind of big slabs of meat. And you're kind of like, sometimes there's that moment where you're like, this person's got it. Like, I'm impressed. I want to see this person do really well. I love those moments because they're so much rarer now than they used to be.
Right. And we've been around the same politicians for so long. No disrespect to all the guys and girls who pay both of us, but it was interesting. Let me go down the ballot a little bit. Let's have a conversation about what else happened on Super Tuesday in the great state of California. All of everybody out there, California. The Senate race. The Dodgers. It's the Dodgers and the what's the team down in Orange County? The Angels.
The Angels.
All the baseball analogies y'all want, but it's going to be Adam Schiff against your favorite Republican. What's his name, Mike?
Steve Garvey.
We're
going to have some good Latino Vote podcast merch coming out in just a few weeks. I don't want to get people too excited about it, but you're going to love what we've come up with. You're going to love this concept. You're going to love this stuff. But let me talk about Steve Garvey a little bit. And again, California, one of the many peculiar things about California is we are the one state in the union that has 30 election days after election day, because it takes us so damn long to count our ballots, because we have made a decision as a state to allow people to vote in any possible way they can imagine at any time they want to, wherever, whenever, however. And so it takes us literally a month to actually get all of the ballots in to find out what the heck happened. And by the time we do, and we're able to do some really good analysis, there's been another 20 primaries and nobody cares anymore. Like the whole world has moved on. Here's what I do know. Adam Schiff ran a tactically brilliant campaign, elevated Steve Garvey in the primary, locked out Katie Porter and Barbara Lee. Schiff has basically, I don't want to say a free pass, but as next to free as he can get in becoming the next U.S. Senator. So he and Alex Padilla will be representing the Golden State come November. Latino turnout was not historically low, but close to historically low.
Well, it was low everywhere, right? Like nobody in California really voted, did they?
No, and we just don't vote in California, and that should an episode for another day because I would argue it has nothing to look. You can't be blaming Republicans of voter suppression in California. You can blame it on a lot of things, but at a certain point, you got to start looking at the data, as some of us do, and say, "Wait a second, this isn't about what we're hearing on from our friends on MSNBC." And I'm not hating. I'll be on MSNBC in just a couple hours. Tune in and get your hot take from Mike Madrid on TV.
Lord.
But I mean, come on, it doesn't matter how many ways you allow people to vote. At a certain point, you got to give them a reason to vote. You got to give them some inspiration, some aspiration, some perspiration. How does that sound?
I'm going to cut him off because he's going down a rabbit hole that I don't know where it's going to end. Let's talk about, so in California, for the first time in the history of California, for all you girls and boys, they're going to have two dude senators that they haven't had in a long time. They have had women senators, the great former mayor of San Francisco, and the other, gosh almighty, Mike, I don't, California.
Marin County, Barbara Boxer.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States.
Oh my God, like so many, Kamala Harris, like all of these folks, like they've been women, amazing women. Now there's going to be two dudes. The dudes are finally in charge. Dudes have never had enough power. Oh my God, two dudes in California. There
Empire
you go.
Strikes back. The Empire Strikes Back.
Also in California last night, thank God, in California 22 in the Central Valley, David Valadao rematch Rudy Salas. If Rudy Salas hadn't have made the final two, Mike Madrid and I would have had nothing to talk about for the next 6 months. But Rudy Salas makes it. So does the Republican. Also, for all of you anti-Trumpers out there who worship at the altar of Mike Madrid, you should know that the dude in the California 22 race was one of the few Republicans, right, Mike, who voted for the impeachment?
Valadao. Yeah.
And he survived.
It's going to be a battle.
Yeah.
Rudy Salas is a good dude. You know Rudy, I think. If not, Rudy's good.
He was a state senator.
Yeah, state assemblyman.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. But he's been a state legislator, very well liked, very well respected, as moderate as they come. They make him differently in the Central Valley, kind of like the Rio Grande Valley. It's a different type of Democrat there, Blue Dogs, and they're Latinos, by the way, Latino conservative or moderate. I consider them moderate.
And speaking of turnout, to interrupt you, some of the lowest turnout in a congressional race by Latinos in this area
in the country. Very, it's all ag, and when I say all ag, there is no suburbs. It is all ag. Like if there's
I went there last year and stepped out of an airplane, and the wafting of the cow manure hit you soon as you step out of the plane. Like I give Sacramento a lot of stuff because of Mike Madrid, but you want to go smell some aroma, go down to Kern County, California. Ooh.
Okay. Yeah, we got cow manure and we got oil. It's an oil patch and agriculture. So we grow on top of the oil basin below. Yeah. But that is Kern County. That is Rudy Salas, David Valadao country. And those Latinos there, very mobile, agriculture, poor, transitory, one of the largest by population and registration Latino districts in the country, but one of the lowest turnout for that state, for all those reasons I just gave you.
Interesting about this race, there were really four people running. And to make our point here, Valadao and Rudy, the Democrat and Republican, are kind of the moderate. There was a conservative, MAGA, ultra-conservative, crazy man running to the right of Valadao, who had run before.
Right.
And then there was a Latina running to the left of Rudy Salas. And so in D.C., everybody started freaking out here 2 months ago and the Republicans, because it was such a small turnout to where this thing could have ended up with two Republicans on the top of the ticket or two Democrats. Correct. And so you saw both national parties come in there, start spending a lot of money in English and Spanish to try to make sure that the two moderates, who probably had the best shot of beating each other, made it to the ballot. So I found that one of the most important storylines of last night. Also in California last night, one of Mike's favorite places to talk about is California 27. Mike Garcia is literally going to be running against a white Democrat named Whiteside, I think his name is. But I don't want to start.
The Democrats can't help themselves. If they just put a Latino in that race, and you and I, Chuck, were working on it. If they had just gotten a Latino, this race would be over. The Democrats pick one up, put it on the board, give Hakeem another vote towards the gavel, but they just can't help themselves.
It's going to be interesting. There'll be a lot of money spent in this race. It was really close last night. But again, if you tally up all of the votes, Garcia wins in a district that's 40% Latino, 38%. It's over 30%.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that district is it's very suburban. It's not like the district we were talking about, which is very poor, very rural. This is suburbia. This is second, third generation Latinos. Mike Garcia himself, West Point grad, son of immigrants. These are English-speaking Latinos. They've got, $700,000 mortgages, living in a cul-de-sac. They don't drive minivans to the soccer games on Saturday. They're driving Range Rovers, right? Oof. This is that kind of community, upper class, upperly mobile. That it's the burbs. Look, Mike Garcia should not have that seat, by the way. He just shouldn't. And Katie Hill had it for a brief moment after the 2018 blue wave. He's held on by his fingertips, Mike Garcia being the Republican. I do believe this is a Democratic pickup.
Let's be clear. Yeah, that the Biden number, just so y'all at home, Biden last time won this seat by like 7 or 8 points.
Yeah. This should be a Democrat should have this seat. All the demographic trends are moving in that direction. I just believe that the Democrats have made a tactical mistake. I think they made it again by not putting a Latino in that seat. Same thing, by the way, if you go further up the valley against John Duarte, there's this is one of the top pickup possibilities for Democrats. Agricultural seat, also a little bit more suburban. This is the one I was telling you, watch this seat. The Latinos are going to break 50% for the Republican, and they did. Adam Gray, longtime legislator here in California, white dude, old Valley crat. They don't make them like that anymore. If the Democrats had a Latino in that race, it would be a quick, easy pickup. It's going to be more of a battle. And even if Adam wins,
be battles.
Yeah, and Adam's going to have to fight for that seat for the rest of his career. If it was a Latino, he'd win it going away. Same thing with Garcia.
I think that the reason that these seats are going to be so marginal and could go either way, and this is important, we'll talk more in detail, because I think the Democrats can pick up both of these. And it's not hard to pick them both up because they're so more heavily Democrat, is that you won't have a Senate race. You're not going to see Adam Schiff spending $10 bazillion to beat a Republican in a statewide. You're not going to have a presidential campaign there. You don't have any other down ballot statewide races. There's nobody else in California between now and November that's going to spend any money to help these folks except for their accompanying super PACs out of Washington or party committees, as they should. So you're going to see a lot of the narrative from us tying these Republicans to Donald Trump. You're going to see a lot of theirs tying the Democratic opposition to Joe Biden. And that's going to be one of the biggest field tests that I'm going to see this cycle on, like, how does that play out? And these people that are disenfranchised with Trump or Biden, who may want to skip that part of the ticket, what do they do down ballot in these House races where they're only hearing from the candidates or their supportive committees or super PACs? Will really be interesting.
Well, those are all great points. Let me add one other. There's no Kevin McCarthy to raise a ton of dough for these guys either. Their fundraising, every one of them has already dropped pretty precipitously. That means a lot, Chuck.
What is it's going to rain? Precipitation?
It just means a lot. Sorry, it just means a lot. So their fundraising has gone down a lot, and he's not going to be there to bail them out with that affinity as a Californian. And that's going to matter for all the reasons you just said. Steve Garvey's not going to raise any money. The National Republican Senatorial Committee is not going to dump any money here. Trump's campaign is broke anyway, but they're not going to spend any money here. These Republican House members in California are on their own. The Speaker Johnson from Louisiana, he's not looking at California saying, let's start building a beachhead in California and make sure we've got Republicans there to advance the conservative cause. Sure, he wants to keep his majority, but that you can get that anywhere. You can go pick that up in Long Island. You can go pick in the old George Santos, now Tom Suozzi seat. There are other pickup opportunities that is not going to be as heartfelt and close to this new speaker as it was to Kevin McCarthy when he was the last speaker.
There are 6, to Mike's point, there are 6 Republican congressional seats in California that could swing the other way if not done correctly. 6. When you start about who controls Congress, this is going to be a big play. Let me hit on a couple more before we jump to the State of the Union. Last night, a lot of folks were watching the Texas Senate race, thinking Roland Gutierrez, who was a state senator from Uvalde, where that horrible shooting happened with those children, could make the final 2 in Texas, because it's pretty easy for a Latino to make the final 2 because so many Latinos. So hat tip to Colin Allred. At all indications, he is going to, and has already been declared the winner without a runoff. He has a bazillion. To me, Mike, that's probably more than $1 million, but less than $1 billion. A bazillion dollars in the bank. So like, he is raising money. And I don't know if y'all heard, but nobody likes Ted Cruz. Like, you got to be really crazy in Texas to love you some Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz's mama don't even invite him over most days. So like, this is going to be a crazy test, Mike.
When your wife and kids visibly hate you, it's one of the great wonders of the world that Ted Cruz was elected to anything, like dog catcher, let alone United States Senate in a state the size of Texas, because that man is universally disliked. But yeah, look, Texas is gonna. Texas seems to be breaking this trend, right? And it happened in 2020. It broke away from the trend line where it was moving towards a more purple position. You don't hear Democrats, with the turn Texas blue mantra anymore. And I'm not saying it can't or it won't. I'm saying it likely won't. I think Colin Alvarez is a great candidate. I think it's got a great profile. I don't think it's got much of a chance, even against Ted Cruz, because the crazy swamp fever in Texas hasn't broken yet. In fact, it's getting even hotter over there.
Last night, for all of you, as the resident Texas expert, I let Mike be the California expert for obvious reasons. The state house, get this, Michael, the state house speaker, the speaker of the house is what we like to call it, is somebody who took on the sitting attorney general and tried to indict him. And remember when they had the recall? Ken Paxton. So Ken Paxton and Donald Trump run somebody against the speaker, and now it's going to a runoff in the Republican primary, and it's not over yet. They may unseat the speaker over to you not breaking the fever shit, to make your point, I think.
It's a civil war. Dan Crenshaw, right? The Tea Party favorite, who then ran, into a buzzsaw of MAGA because he had the audacity to tell the truth, dramatically underperformed in his congressional district last night. It's not in threat of losing Republican seat, but Republicans, these rabid MAGA Republicans, are watching everything. And even where they're not a majority, they are willing to act against the best interests of themselves and their party by turning on their own. And as much as they don't like the Democrats and the communists and the socialists and the Antifas and the whatever else it is that they lie awake worrying about at night, they hate somebody who betrays the cause. I'm saying that personally because I've been, right standing square in the middle of that blowback. But a guy like Crenshaw, who has the audacity to tell the truth, or somebody who defies Ken Paxton, regardless of whether it has any bearing in reality, becomes the absolute object of attack and ire. And that's what you're watching in Texas. I think that Texas doesn't actually get back into a competitive blue position until the civil war amongst Republicans actually turns into armed conflict, which is probably what most of them want anyway.
That's already happened in Michigan, the Republican Party. The last thing I'll hit on with the Super Tuesday stuff is, Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, speaking of how Republicans can't help themselves with these MAGA candidates. In the state of North Carolina, they've had a Democratic governor now for 2 cycles. For 8 years, Roy Moore has termed out very popular Democratic Attorney General Josh, I forgot Josh's last name, but he is very popular, middle-of-the-road guy, ran pretty much unopposed, got the nomination last night in a state that has one of the fastest growing Latino populations in the country. Mike, can you like to tell me who the Republicans nominated? There we go. It's teed right up for you.
That was unbelievable. That was a great setup.
Hips.
I'm gonna add I'm going to add a little bit more to this too. When did the South start nominating moderate, educated, reasonable white boys as Democrats? And now there's a black Nazi from the Republican Party winning the nomination. Literally a Nazi, Holocaust-denying Nazi is the nominee. Well, I don't even know his name. I don't want to know his name. I mean, we can talk. We gotta have him as a guest. I just want to know what that kind of species is like. Like how deeply ingrained is your self-hate when you are a black
Nazi? Those of you
Nazi
who want to Google this guy, his name is Mark Robertson. Mark Robertson is the black crazy Republican going to run against the white common sense, I'd assume, Jewish gentleman named Josh Stein. I'm not going to go out on a record to be like Mr. Stein, Stein, is taking on the black Nazi. I wish we were making this part up, but please continue.
Only
Mr.
in America.
Madrid.
Only in America. How beautiful, right? In the South. In the South. That's what I love the best about all of this. Now, look, I've talked a lot about North Carolina. I'm going to talk a lot about it again because North Carolina for me was in the hunt in 2020 when I was with the Lincoln Project. I must have spent $12 million pushing the envelope, trying to get that state into contention. Last time it went blue was 2008. Barack Obama popped it over on his first election, went back to Romney in 2012, and it sat there in this red column ever since. But they regularly elect Democratic governors in the off cycle. And even when Democrats lose North Carolina, they're losing by less than 60, 70,000 votes. Now, there's 280,000 registered Latino voters, and they are never, that's too small of a subsample to break out into the poll in polling because it's less than 5%, but it's 5% in a state where the margin of victory is less than 1% or 1.5%. So North Carolina's been sleeping on Latino voters. And I have been saying, I think his name is Jamie Harrison, whatever the DNC guy's name is, throw $1 million at North Carolina, roll the dice, right? So a crap shoot, register a bunch of Latino voters, pop the voter model, right? All these election data nerds that are looking at the polling data and scratching their head and sharpening their pencils, trying to figure out what the roadmap is to actually get more white college educated voters, or how do we get more African-American voters? Like there's no more African-American voters to be had in North Carolina. You've been running that drill for literally 80, 90 years. And I'm not saying that's bad. You need all of them, but you've been given this gift of new Latino voters that nobody is paying attention to. $1 million. How many Latinos can you register, Chuck, with $1 million?
A bazillion.
Yeah, about a bazillion. In that's his Spanglish term for between a billion and a million.
More than a million, less than a billion for all of you at home.
So you can get a bazillion new Latinos for just $1 million. That's a great return on your investment.
I get that's less than $1 a vote.
It's less than $1 a vote. So throw some money at it and actually move the model in a way that nobody's watching and listening. Move the raw vote up so all those pollsters don't see that. It's not in their likely voter screen. And suddenly on election day, you've got this flood of new Democrats because they're going to be 75% plus Democrats. And that's how you win North Carolina. You throw in a Nazi on top of that to run against.
Seems like you could draw a contrast pretty well.
You could draw some good contrast. I would love to have the direct mail contract for that campaign.
We are working on that as we speak. Let's be clear. I'm the expert in anti-Nazi mail.
Man,
come on, man.
I want a piece of that action. And even if I don't get paid, I'll volunteer to do that stuff because I want to win some awards because there's some really good creative content to be had when you're running a white moderate in the South against a black Nazi.
Hat tip to our sister Irene down in North Carolina. Irene runs an organization called Poder. She runs NC Poder. North Carolina Poder. And she's an amazing Latina. She runs the Latino table down there. Every time I talk to her, Mike, she's talking about the lack of resources that's moving there. But she's constantly year-round organizing. She may not have 100 staff, but they're registering people.
Yes.
They're doing all kinds of good work. And they are really...
A little shout out. NC Poder is the way we say it in Mexican.
And there we go. Say that, not in redneck. Not the Poders.
So let me say this. Irene... Jamie Harrison listens to this podcast. So does Joe Biden, by the way.
There you go.
I'm going to direct them to give you $1 million so that you can get the job done. And Irene will turn North Carolina blue.
I know Irene's mail consultant. He may be on this podcast, so we could use that. And I know exactly what we would do with it.
Okay. Well, and you win the state, right?
Right, exactly. She's been doing amazing work down there.
Mr. President, if you could tune in a little bit, lean into this. This is Mike Madrid
$1 million
again.
to Irene down in North Carolina.
You have listened to my advice on everything Latino that I have said on this podcast. I'm directing you. I'm directing you to give Irene $1 million, and let's put North Carolina in the blue column.
Let's talk about State of the Union before we run out of time. Big days. When you're hearing this, the president will have just given his State of the Union the night before. If our crack good production team get this out like they always do on a Friday. If they smoke too much weed, it won't go out till Monday, but we always try to keep that till the weekend. So Friday's our target date. The State of the Union will have already happened, Mike. Mm-hmm. And this is what me and you hope is covered there, and hope that things happen there to where the story and the narrative is told, because very few times do you get that audience.
Oh, yeah.
What do you hope that Brother Biden tells us all at the State of the Union?
I think he's got to do two things, and I think he'll do it well. I think you've got to drive the Ukraine message. Navalny's widow is going to be the guest of the president in the upper balcony. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Beautiful. Great messaging. Puts it there square on stage, especially to those protectionist, isolationist Republicans who are trying to, do Putin's dirty work in the United States Congress. And on immigration, he's going to do what Bill Clinton did in 1995. For all of you political junkies out there, go to YouTube, look at the Clinton State of the Union in 1995. That's the speech that Joe Biden's going to give. And it worked masterfully for Bill Clinton, by the way. I'm pretty confident that that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to seize the upper hand on immigration and in Ukraine. And what the most remarkable thing is about this presidency is, man, except for the abortion issue and except for some of these culturally conservative issues, this guy's Ronald Reagan. Did you hear that, Chuck?
What? Like the guy who said tear down the wall?
Yeah. I mean, Biden's gonna, he's been building a wall, but the oil production is higher now than it ever has been. Joe Biden is more pro-oil than George W. Bush. He's more pro-NATO and more anti-Russia than Ronald W. Reagan. Ronald Wilson Reagan, by the way. Nobody has united the Western world under the banner of freedom more than any president, perhaps since Ronald Reagan, maybe even more. NATO wasn't as big as it was under Ronald Reagan than it is now. I mean, this is a Reagan Republican. Joe Biden is a Reagan Republican. You heard it here first on the Latino podcast. That's why I'm so comfortable saying I love what this guy's doing. I love what he's doing.
I think that you're right. I think that the disparities in the war piece just make him stand out, because he knows he's so comfortable in that lane, because he was the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee for so long. So he literally knows where all the bodies are buried. My thoughts are, and I heard this morning, that I don't folks out there understand this, because when they talk about job creation, Republicans, when I talk to them, are always like, well, we were at no jobs and COVID happened and it's the COVID rebound and their COVID jobs. Well, if you take the COVID numbers out of the job numbers, there's been more jobs created for a longer period of time, over month by month, since Joe Biden has been in office than ever in recorded history. Like, nobody's created more jobs. Now, as a messenger and as somebody who creates message, you don't want to stand up and tell everybody how great everything is when a lot of people don't feel like things have gotten better. But going back to my Bill Clinton days, when he used to put his finger, for those of you who are looking, Bill Clinton wants to point at you because he's a professorial and he knows a lot. So he would bend that finger for all of you YouTubers. And when he would talk to you, instead of doing this is what he wants to do, he would do this to make it feel a little less soft and be like, I did this and I did this and I did this, you dumb some bitches. I did this and I did this. Joe Biden has to do a little bit of that, I think. He needs to own some of his successes. And then he needs to tie things like immigration and other things that me and Mike talked about just last week, and look at that whole crowd and be like, put the bill on my desk. I'll sign it tomorrow.
Yes.
Put the bill on my desk. It ain't perfect, but it's a bipartisan agreement between Democrats and Republicans. I will sign it tomorrow. We must secure our border.
Yeah. And I think he's got to use language like that. And I think he probably will. That and drop and bust out 25 push-ups. That's what I'd really like to see, is just to see the guy just show his physical
malarkey.
domination.
This is a bunch of malarkey is what this is right now. This is a bunch of malarkey.
Challenge Trump to a pull-up competition.
A pull-up competition. Tell him he could out-shuffle him for 30 yards. Like Donald Trump would have a heart attack. Joe Biden may be shuffling. He may be shuffling his little feet off going 90 miles an hour, but Donald Trump would fall over. Right.
Yeah.
It's like the tortoise and the hare. Donald Trump will jump out to a 5-step lead, and then he will fall over with a heart attack with his fat ass. And Joe will shuffle right by him. Right by him. Speaking of shuffling, let me tell y'all why I was on my phone when Mike interrupted me a while ago, is because you want to talk about hand-to-hand combat and what politics is really about. People want to do the right thing. And this morning before the podcast started, I thought a good way to clear my head is that on the Ebony Payne website, you can sign up to get a yard sign. So one of the things that I like to do is go and personally deliver yard signs to people who've taken the time to fill out a form on a website. And when I show up at their houses, I go to evaluating like what kind of car do they drive, how poor, and how like all the things, right? But there's one thing I want to tell you podcasters, because we talk about national politics, but the thing that makes me happy is the pettiness of neighbors. There's never been a person who has requested a yard sign from us where their neighbor did not have the opposition's yard sign in their yard. So these people I know are fighting.
Yes.
And somebody's like, screw your Wendell Felder sign. Here's my 3 Ebony Payne signs, and take that and put it in your ass. And every time when there's somebody else's sign there, I leave them like an extra one. So if they want to put it in their window. So if you think that your politics are petty, you should be running for city council in Washington, D.C., because it charms my heart every time I do it, Mike. What do you think?
I have not seen you this happy in a long time. I love the self-acknowledged pettiness of the business, because to be a successful political consultant, guys, you got to have a lot of petty in you, because there's just so much shit you got to put up with that the only way you get through it is by those small moments of joy, like you just saw in Chuck's face. If you don't watch this on YouTube, just watch that one part of the clip, because he was like a kid in a candy store. It was just pure joy in Chuck's face.
Delivering those yard signs are some of my. Anyway, everybody, make sure you pay attention to the State of the Union. Super Tuesday's over. Wonderful Wednesday's over. We're going to have a great show coming up next week. There's so much breaking every week. I want to remind everybody that we want to hear from you. We want to know, as you can see, me and Mike are not going to have a guest every week because there's just so much. And we've been hearing from our listeners about folks that want to hear from what we think, because we bring a lot of knowledge, but we also want to hear from what you think. So make sure that you send us messages, you like the podcast. And Mike, what are you looking forward to coming up after Super Tuesday? Nikki Haley dropping out. Like, where do you think that we go from here? Not to prolong this, but for next week, what are you thinking about?
Well, I mean, obviously, we're going to be looking at the next round of primary states, but here's the big considerations. Donald Trump's legal problems are really just heating up as bad as they are. There's going to be some serious court problems. The Stormy Daniels court issue and Michael Cohen's testimony is going to be coming in the next couple of weeks. We're going to find out whether or not the Republican Party, the National Republican Party, puts his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, into the RNC co-chair position. Breaking, I don't want to spoiler alert here, but she will get it. And then we're going to find out whether or not all of this donor money is going to continue to go to pay this mountain of legal fees. And we also know Trump's broke. We just learned that he's broke. He can't come up with the $435 million bond that he's required to pay. All of the legal dynamics of what he has to deal with are going to become the next phase of this primary competition. That's what I'm looking at, because I want to see if what Nikki Haley broke open with that dam continues to leak forward, or whether all these people will come back and bend the knee like Mitch McConnell and the rest of the MAGA crew.
There's one thing for sure as we go out this week is next week we still will not have the final results from California, but we may have some hair replacement therapy that me and Mike can recommend. Don't forget to like the podcast. Don't forget to share with your friends. Don't forget to call your mama. And until next week, we're out of here.